Hello and welcome to a bonus Spark AR little video. Now I've been asked by a couple of people how to create an animation sequence for Spark AR. Now the program I choose is After Effects, simply because I have access to it and for me it's easier. But you could use any program that would allow you to create a series of images sequentially. So you could create your images in something like Photoshop, CorelDRAW, etc. and just move your images frame by frame, similar to how you would do stop motion. But I'm just going to do this in After Effects because, again, like I said, I've got access to this. So what we've got here is this little animation here, which is a kind of explosion. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I try and keep my file sizes and image sizes as small as possible. So I typically, for example, would go into my composition settings if I was using After Effects. I would then reduce the file size of my animation, so I would reduce its size and width. So I'm thinking this is going on a mobile phone, so I've got a maximum I'd want is about 720p, but obviously the smaller I can go the better, because again that keeps down my file sizes. So I'm going to scale this down until the highest value is below the 700 at least. So I'm going to go with, let's say, about 600 by 338, for example. I'm going to now just scale this composition down because I've got a composition within a composition. So if you want to see the original composition layout, it is here. So this is all of the controls for that fire. And as you can see, it has transparency. And what I tend to do is I make sure that my animation is on a transparent background, so I don't have any image below it. So when I export this, I can keep this as a PNG sequence. So this is how, if I wanted to have an animated face filter, I would just use the face template and animate frame by frame my effect, so to speak. So once I'm happy with my animation, and we'll go through how to create some animations in After Effects in future videos for a variety of other reasons, we can simply go to File, Export, and Add to Render Queue. But before I do that, I want to adjust my frame rate because by default I'm working at the moment at 25 frames a second, and typically animation is around 24, but I'm going to go even less. I'm going to go around 12 frames a second. So this is half of 24 frames, and because I can always within Spark AR double it within the animation settings. So I'm just going to go 12 frames, around 1 second of duration, and keeping its width, its highest value, to be below at least 720, so in this case 600. Just press OK on that. I'm going to go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. And in After Effects, I'm using the render queue, not Media Encoder, bear in mind. So I'm going to Output Module. I'm going to change that to be PNG Sequence. So if you're using any other program, you'd make sure you save your image as PNG. And you want to make sure that you can keep your channel set to RGB plus alpha if you want to keep transparency. If this is an animation that I wanted a background on, I would just save it as a JPEG sequence. But I'm going to go with PNG because PNGs keep transparency, especially if you have the RGB plus alpha turned on for that. So just press OK, and this will give me the name of that composition and these hashtags, which will be the frame number. I'm just going to create a new folder. So there we go, create that folder. It's going to save as a PNG in the composition. So composition 1, this will be 0001, 0002, etc, etc. Press save, hit render. This won't take long, there we go. I can now go to my desktop, open up my folder, and in here is my 12 frames of my animation. So I could go now into Spark AR, and I'll be able to import this. I'll download an update later. I could now create a new blank project, and I can import this using the Add Asset, Animation Sequence, choose File, go to the folder where my animation sequence is selected, select all of those frames, press Open. This will create as a texture with those frames in. I could then, I'm just going to add a plane just for speed reasons. So I can add this plane, create a material. On that material, assign my animation sequence. And if I want to keep transparency and remove any potential grey areas that could appear, I also turn alpha test on. And by default, my animation sequence is playing at 25 frames a second. I could change it to 12 and it would play at the same rate as what my composition was within After Effects. And now with this playing, I could simply scale this up and then have this controlled in a variety of ways, which we have covered in other videos within the Spark AR playlist. So we could set this to be a loop animation and have the loop animation go forwards and backwards quite simply. So we'll do that right now. So we could have something like this, where we have a loop animation, we select our animation sequence, set the current frame, and simply link two together. And actually no, we need to add a frame and transition in between, sorry. So we add a frame transition, then link them together. And we make sure our frames are set to be the number of frames in our sequence. So we've got 12 frames in our sequence. So now I'll loop our animation. If I want it to go forwards and backwards, I'll just turn the mirrored on. So now we have the explosion and then it implodes back in. We can also control this using a typical animation. So we could say animation play when, let's go to screen tap because that's the easiest, quickest way of testing things I find. Into the play. So now when the screen is tapped, it'll play. And it'll only play it once because we'd have to reset it. So I'm going to link that also to reset. So tap, and now every time I tap, it will play the animation, but also reset it so we can tap again to play it again. And that is the simplest way of creating an animation sequence or image sequence essentially. And like I said, you can create those images in other programs by simply drawing those keyframes as you would if you was doing traditional cartoons or stop motion work. I hope this has been of some use. And this has just been a little bonus video thanks to some comments on my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.